Welcome to another edition of BCR Webcasting. I'm very delighted to be joined today by Luis Montesinos, who's the Group Treasurer of Grupo Lantero. And Luis is going to be speaking on a panel at our forthcoming Supply Chain Finance Summit, which will take place in Madrid on the 29th and 30th of January. And the panel that Luis will be contributing to is called "What are the prime reasons corporates move to adopt supply chain finance? And is that changing over time?" Luis, welcome. Luis, you're a senior treasurer at a major corporate. How have your priorities evolved in recent years? In terms of managing your working capital and in terms of the sort of global changes that we've seen in economies and the geopolitical landscape?
Sure. Look, Michael, I think balance sheet management is much more a priority nowadays than it used to be. In my personal case, I've been working in different companies, and I always used, working capital optimization instruments, let's say what is called now supply chain finance, even before the industry was named as such. But what I can appreciate nowadays is that this is a kind of a global phenomenon, global trend. I think all companies in all industries are now very much, focused on the optimizing a balance sheet, and working capital is a key element in there. You see, so I would say that it is really nowadays a trend, and I think it will continue to be so over the next years. Now we have a lot of new different schemes and solutions. There are also many new providers. We used to work only with banks, and now it's a different thing. But in essence, I think the underlying reason is that it's a focus on working capital and balance sheet management that for some companies is really a matter of need nowadays.
Yeah. Was there any particular trigger for that focus? Was it the banking crisis? After that,
I would say yes. After the last global financial crisis, everything was changed, particularly here in Europe, and specifically in some countries that suffer more than others, as you remember. Well, I don't want to refer to the peaks and all that things, which is an old story. But yeah, it was a kind of a trigger, not only a trigger, it was really something obligatory, mandatory, for some companies to really revisit all their internal processes and procedures in order to really improve working capital management. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And in that same period, we've seen some huge developments in terms of digitization and digital platforms and blockchain. To what extent do you think those new technologies are reshaping supply chain finance or supply chain even strategies at corporate level?
Yeah, I mean, technology and all these new, let's say, instruments are enabled, to make this industry grow. That's clear. There's a direct relationship between that. From my personal role, I try to follow what's going on in the market, but at the end of the day, Michael, we don't really care what technology is behind. What we really do care for is good service, good prices, and then efficient operations with our different providers, either banks or non-banks. Sometimes we know that banks are working with other companies behind, in terms of their engines for these supply chain finance propositions. But that's not something that I'm, particularly worried about. I just want a good service and good prices. Sorry if I reiterate that.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you about your choice of service provider and what you look for in terms of if you're considering a non-bank provider compared to a bank provider. Um,
Yeah,
what?
but it is definitely, sorry, it is definitely important. As I said, it's an enabler because it's not only about me, either in terms of receivables or payables, supply chain finance, because we are also dealing with our customers and our suppliers. So the more automized, the more digitalized that all these solutions are, and the better for these other let's say parties in these schemes, because it's not only the company, it's the other involved counterparties, either suppliers or customers.
But do you see any fundamental differences between the services between the banks and the non-bank providers?
It depends. What I see is that banks are, some of them, have already invested a lot in their solutions, and they could be equally, technological than the third-party suppliers or fintechs that are supposed to be, the providing the last solutions in the market. As a matter of fact, you know that some banks use these same solutions than fintechs. The, I won't give names in this interview, okay?
No.
But that banks cooperate with some fintechs providing their same, types of solutions. Uh, but yeah, we do appreciate that there are banks that are more automized than others, or more digitalized than others. Absolutely, yes. And in terms of fintechs, you have the whole range. Huh? You have the whole range.
Mm.
Yeah.
And clearly, these are huge decisions that need to be made when you're considering joining a supply chain finance program. I mean, how do you go about evaluating the effectiveness of these programs and the efficiency of these programs, both before selecting a program provider and also um, during the use of a program provider as well?
So in my experience, okay, what I've done over the years is typically I like to have a kind of diversified uh, group of providers. Typically, I do not tie up with only one, either bank or non-bank. So in this company I'm working for now, what we did is to launch a tender, both for factoring and for payables financing. So invited, and this was mainly for banks. We discussed with other non-banks providers, but I'm currently working only with banks. Okay, on the payable side, on factoring. Then typically I also receive proposals from customers offering us supply chain finance solutions, and we've used some of them in the past as well. But as a customer, I nowadays work only with banks, and it was through a tender, through an RFQ that we launched a few years ago. And what we have is we didn't award it to a single bank. We work with different banks alongside, but under the same terms, conditions, prices, and methodology. It is very important, the process and also the accounting treatment, as you know. So we wanted to make sure that all those requirements have been fulfilled properly.
Do you consider that supply chain finance has now become almost standard practice, or um, something which corporates can't really do without in terms of working capital optimization?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, as I said, as you can see, I've been around for some years now, and I remember 20 years ago that I was using, confirming and payables, financing, and all these kind of things, and it was difficult on dealing with international suppliers. Those tools were originated, as you probably know, in Spain and the south of Europe, and then Italy. And it was difficult sometimes when you were dealing with U.S. suppliers or Asian suppliers, to convince them. It was good because I think the product is very useful, is very efficient, and so it takes not that much to convince them. But nowadays you don't need to do that because everybody is aware, everybody is somehow acquainted with it. So that learning process that we have to go through with our suppliers is not necessary anymore because it's a kind of a commodity nowadays. So which is good, and it's one of the reasons why the industry is thriving over the last years.
Yeah, and most of your suppliers are adopting and joining the program, are they?
We have a very good, let's say, ratio of suppliers that we use this now, what we call confirming, which is supply chain finance on the payable side. It's our standard payment mean. Only by exception, we do not use this as a payment, no? A method. And then we have a high percentage of suppliers that use it, that anticipate it, depending on the country, depending on the circumstances, also depending on the supplier. But we have a pretty good percentage of them that are, anticipating and using our lines. And this is because we also offer a very good prices that our banks complain, but it's good for suppliers. So you need to find the right balance there, because our banks are also happy with the let's say our track record.
Mm. These things are so often about finding a balance, as you say, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Lewis, thank you very much for your time today, and we very much look forward to hearing more from you at our Supply Chain Finance Summit in Madrid, as I mentioned, is on the 29th and 30th of January. And we look forward to hearing from you and from your fellow panelists again at that time. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to that, and we'll elaborate more. Okay.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Michael. Bye. Have a good day.